right there, Brooke. How's it going today?
Conrad, what's going on, man? You doing all right?
I'm doing pretty good. I think we've got a fun guest here. It was so funny. I think, Alex, I made this joke to you before. It'll be very easy for us to record in person because we're a mile apart. And the time we see each other is when we're like 1,000 miles away at a conference. So it's funny. That's funny, just this fun little recording today. But anyways, Brooke, I'm curious, how did you originally meet Alex in the industry?
Yeah, well, first off, everyone knows Alex. I mean, she's an icon in this industry. Known her for years, but I don't remember how we actually met. I know we chatted about Vintory, but I think we met maybe at some conferences and things like that. I don't know. Alex, do you remember?
I would say the same, and I think you're as well known, if not more than I am for sure. But yeah, I think it's gone back so long. I feel like I've just always known of you, and then at some point we started chatting more at conferences, and just big fan over here. So,
yeah. And we're big fans of you too. So obviously, I've had the pleasure of being on your podcast before. I love it. Great, love what you and Annie are doing. So thank you for everything you do for the industry.
Absolutely, thank you.
Nice. Awesome. Well, Alex, the reason that you got connected maybe a little bit more recently was to contribute to the book, and you were kind enough to put your thoughts together on some of the mistakes that you'd made. And you said you came at it before you record from a different perspective. So I'm also curious what that perspective is as we get going. But if you're okay, we can dive right into it and start with number one. Reading that one off on my side here. So number one, thinking too small always sets your targets higher than what you think you can achieve where you want to be. If you set them at what you think is realistic, you will come in under. What's kind of been your story here, Alex? Has there been moments in your career when you kind of picked a more conservative target and then figured out a way to make it more aggressive and more thoughtful? How have you gone through this?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started my career in the Myrtle Beach market, worked for an advertising agency and had, several kind of small vacation rental companies that they were really focused on, they just wanted to be known as the best local company. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. But things changed when I got to Condo World, and we wanted to make Condo World the most well-known brand in the short-term rental space in the universe. And I think we didn't quite get to that point, but I think having the bigger thinking mentality, it just leads you to make decisions that are more strategic. And when you set your sights lower, I mean, in a lot of cases, you're not gonna hit those targets. You're gonna be under. So shoot for the stars, reach for the stars, and keep your targets high, and keep people motivated to go for those things. Because honestly, we're all capable of anything we put our minds to. So nothing is off the table as far as possibilities, as long as you've got the right people that are supporting it with you.
It is pretty amazing. What does David Goggins say? Like, take the governor off your brain. But it's like, if you have those really like high goals, or like one exercise we do as a leadership team is we say, all right, how can we 10x our revenue in the next year?
Yep.
And then, you always get one or two people that are like, oh, that's crazy. You'll never be able to do that. I'm like, well, let's just pretend. If we were to 10x it, what would the steps need to be able to do this? And look, again, realistically, you're probably not going to 10x your business. But maybe you 3x it, maybe you 2x it. That's still pretty damn good. You're not looking for a 10 or a 15% growth rate, So sometimes when you have that kind of outside thinking or out of the box thinking, you end up achieving it. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I find this in rock settings sometimes, Brooke. I don't know if you found this, a team member, where they kind of sandbag it a little bit. They're like, all right, my rock is going to be that I want to accomplish this by the end of the quarter with these measurables. So they write a good rock, but then it's like, yeah, to your point, it's like a 5% increase or a 10% increase. And sometimes you have to go back in there and be like, I'm sure you can hit that. But, and then you actually tell them what maybe is a little bit more realistic. Because I don't think you should hit every rock either. It shouldn't be like so easy that you could just roll out of bed and do it. You have to be more to it.
They do say that, right? If your rocks, if you're achieving only, if you're achieving 100% of your rocks, then you didn't set the right goals. I think they said like 75 to 80% is the optimal amount. Like, I still remember I went skiing as a kid, and I came back home and I was so excited. I went to my dad. I said, Dad, guess what? I didn't fall one time. And, I was expecting him to give me like a high five or something like that. And he gave me the old, well, it means you weren't pushing yourself hard enough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot to that too, of like, there's a difference between goals and targets. And one thing that I learned years ago, I actually, speaking of 10X, I read the 10X book by Grant Cardone and started listening to a lot of his content. And one of his things that he preaches is to write down your goals and your targets every single day, which I actually do. And I still use his formatted notebook. And that really helps, like, keep your vision set on what those big, lofty, ambitious goals are. But then every day the targets are part of how how you get there. So that might seem huge to become the, most well-known brand in the vacation rental space, but what are the things we're going to do every day that are leading
Mhm.
us to achieve that?
I
Mhm.
love that.
No.
I think I've shared this with Conrad before. So we have obviously our rocks and our annual goals, but I do start every day with, I call it my 6 things. And what I do
Yeah.
is I look at those big rocks, I look at those annual goals, and I write down 6 things that I will accomplish today. I will not leave my desk. And a lot of times it's just one step towards that goal, though. It's one step. I
Yep.
mean, it could be as simple as like just sending an email. It could be as simple as
Hmm.
like sending a text message. But there's something in that momentum that happens when every single day you're just making those little tiny steps. It's like, I'm a big fan of Kaizen, the Japanese art of small incremental improvements. So if you can just
Yeah.
make that one little improvement, towards that goal, it's amazing the kind of the momentum that you get.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. I like that. Well, awesome, Alex. I think you mentioned that it's okay for us to bundle 2 and 3 together. So I'm going to read 2 and 3 together and kind of send it out because I think you have some thoughts on this so we can spend some time digging into it.
Yeah.
Number 2 is assuming everyone is motivated by the same things you are. And then number 3 is thinking everyone that is in your circle is in your corner. So maybe you could talk to this because this is more about like the people dynamics, the team dynamics of understanding what people are motivated by. That's one thing. And then understanding maybe the motivations of people that you are working with. Are they actually working towards the same goals you are? So I don't know if you could speak to this for a second and maybe what you've learned in your career about working with those team and making sure that you are, rowing the boat together, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I have a direct experience with this, and then also just seeing other companies that have gotten to this boat that, um, it's if you have some people in the company that are super supportive of one initiative, but the rest of the company is kind of on the sidelines of like, why are we doing this? I don't want to do it. I'm going to do it because I'm being told to do it, but I'm either going to take one route of I'm going to fight it the whole way, or I'm just not going to put in effort to make it the best that it could be. And it comes down to a culture thing, and that's a really hard thing for companies when you're in big growth mode stages of, you've got people at all different levels of the business and some that see, far into the future of why you're making those decisions. It's kind of like that book, was the My Ice is Melting, or gosh, the iceberg is melting. I can't remember the name. It's in my library here
I'm not
somewhere.
familiar with this one. Yeah.
It's basically, you've got to be looking forward to the future, but you have to get everybody on the team rowing in the same direction. And it's a challenging thing to do. But I've seen mild success when you have half the team that's with it and half that's not. And I've seen complete failures when that happens too. And the derailment is going to happen no matter what. And tying it to the first part, assuming people are motivated by the same things you are. For me, I'm very motivated by growth and achievement. Like those are two things that are super exciting and fulfilling for me. Some people that they don't want to grow. So to go in and get a team that you're trying to tell them you're going to, build this amazing new idea and concept that's going to make the company go in this different direction, that's scary to some people. So I've certainly learned over the years, it takes you have to kind of work with people one on one to understand what's important to them and how what this big goal is going to, or mission once it's accomplished, is going to help them personally. And it's, that's tough in a company too, because you do assume, well, we're all in this together. Not necessarily. I mean, the culture's got to be there that everybody feels like this is good for them and for their personal reasons for being part of that organization.
I love that. Assuming everybody's motivated by the same thing you are. I mean, it's so funny. Since I've been doing these psychometric personality assessments, I just assumed everybody thinks like me. Everybody's motivated by the same things I am. But it's so often when we go through these profiles and you see this, they're like, you know what? Money may not be the motivator for that person. It
Yeah,
may be
yeah,
personal growth. It may be something else, and I remember I was just looking at somebody's profile. And again, I completely surprised. They really don't care about money. The money
yeah,
is
yeah,
not their motivator. But
yeah,
if you can give them resources and give them, how they can continue their education and things like that is much more motivating for them. So knowing that each person is motivated by different, things is super important. And the fact that they're not like you is was
yeah.
a pretty big eye opening thing for me too.
Yeah, and I think with those personality tests, I mean, that's I'm so glad that, your company and some others have brought those kind of to light within our industry. And now I feel like a lot of companies are using them. But just for myself personally, it's like when you read the report from somebody else you work with, you're like, aha, and I get it now. Like, no wonder the way that I'm trying to present this to them is not clicking, and vice versa. So I think, really bringing that, boiling it down to the culture of the organization and understanding the different personality types that make up that organization, that it's better to not have everybody that's exactly the same. You don't want 10
Yeah.
of the same person. I mean, that also doesn't work, but just really being that flexible and empathetic leader that understands how to connect with people on different levels.
Yeah. I heard the story. It's like a football team. If you had a whole football team of just nothing but linebackers, it wouldn't be very fun. Or if you had a whole team of just nothing but 180-pound wide receivers, you have different positions, right? And everybody's built for the different. Do your job, do the
Yeah.
right role. But again, it's you have to have that diversity of the team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, I think that's a great way to think about it. And yeah, I've experienced, unfortunately, what you've experienced too, Alex, where we agree this is the way we're going, and then people will say yes, and then they don't act in accordance with what they said. Oh yes, you said you were aligned with me here, and then all of a sudden they're not doing what they need to be doing, and we're up in the front of the boat rowing as hard as we can. We look back and they're sitting, drinking a Mai Tai or
Yeah.
something, not getting things
Yeah.
done, which
Yeah.
is frustrating. For sure. All right. Well, let's head over to number 4 then, kind of going in a slightly different direction, but it's still about people. Number 4, surrounding yourself with the wrong people. You're the sum of the
Mhm.
5 people that you're around the most. Are they helping you or holding you back? I imagine, Alex, this is both like personal relationships, could be team, could be just, mentorship, stuff you have outside of maybe your core company or business. What's kind of been the thing that you've done to put yourself around the right people, and how has that helped you?
Yeah, I think, in my experience, I started very early on working with the Chamber of Commerce, CVB here, and just got exposed to really, really smart people that were way further ahead than I was when I was, 23, 24, just starting in the business. But really, just learned so much from that experience. And I think what that taught me was, I mean, you want to have people that you're surrounding yourself that also have different perspectives, different backgrounds, and that do different things than you. People that are further, and maybe it's not even, I mean, it's the sum of 5 people that you're the most like, but I'm thinking about this on a wider scale. You want to be around people that are doing completely different things. I mean, your perspective is going to be vastly greater if you're not just hanging around, your family or close friend group and just the people that you work directly with. In our industry, obviously, the conferences are a huge part of that, and I think that's why we all, frequent them and we enjoy it, because it's like you get to see people that are, maybe they're not hugely far ahead of you, but they could be just a step or two ahead. And just by being around them and being able to ask questions, it's like you're bettering yourself and your knowledge of what you're trying to accomplish by being around them. So I think, it could be a negative thing if those 5 people that you're around are negative Nancy's and they don't believe in you. It's going to be really hard to get what you want to get done. So, whether that's finding a coach or a mentor, we all have our families, and sometimes families are not supportive of different ambitions and, say you're crazy to think you can do that. Well, you can't necessarily get rid of your family, but you can surround yourself with positive people and influences that are going to support you and make you believe in yourself.
Yeah. This is so good. And Alex, just so you know, I've used your quote so many times. I think not only do we use it in the book multiple times, we referenced it, but just in many of these podcasts, we've actually referenced it too. So it's so true. I mean, it's also one of those things. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're probably not in the right room. If you
Right.
want to push yourself, you need to surround yourself with people a lot smarter than you. I'm in a group called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. We have a group of 7 of us that are in our forum group. We get together once a month, go over any kind of business challenges and opportunities and things like that. But you sparked something that we really, when we were looking for new members, we wanted diversity, right? Diversity in male versus female, diversity in age, diversity in businesses, diversity in just their profiles, everything about them. Because if you have everybody in the room looks just like you're not going to
Yeah.
expand your thinking. So having that diversity is really, really important to really
Yeah.
growing and also getting different perspectives.
Yeah, I think the quote maybe you mentioned that you had in the book is your network is your net worth. I didn't come up with that, but I believe that. I believe in that very much, and I'm proof of that at this point in my career juncture, that I've gone out on my own in this marketing consultancy role, that I have so many connections, and it's because of those things that I've done along the years that have compounded. And the people that are around you, that's your future.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. And it doesn't always come together right away. Like sometimes it's like when you need someone, then they're there for you because you've made some
Yeah.
relationship prior. Like that was kind of the conversation that was had recently. So that's always a good thing
Yeah.
to think about it too.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's go number 5. Kind of a different angle here, but one that I think maybe some people can relate to if they've gone down this path before. If not, we can save them potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. So number 5, building all your own technology in-house. Unless you plan to be a technology company, this ultimately leads to less innovation, higher costs, and becomes a liability for the future of your business if you're not properly structured to actually maintain the technology. If something were to happen to your main developer tomorrow, you hope that doesn't happen, but it can. Would your company be okay? If not, it's time to think about a new strategy. Your job is protect the future of the company. I feel like a lot of newer companies, Alex, are falling into this trap where they say, "Oh, I would never use an off the shelf PMS. I'm going to build my own," but then they end up spending. I mean, in some cases, I'm not joking, right? Hundreds of thousands of dollars to build this tech, and are they
Yeah.
actually in a better spot than if they just use insert PMS name here, right?
Mhm.
What's kind of your
Right.
perspective on this? Maybe this was learned the hard way, but what have you learned about it?
Yeah, and I mean, I've got a great story about it, but I think for most companies, I don't know that they would fall into this, but I mean, we had at Condo World, we had built all of our own in-house tech, and it was phenomenal. I mean, it was, I think, better than what's out on the market for the mainstream right now in a lot of ways. But for a small company, and I've talked to a lot that have said to me, "Yeah, we want to build our own PMS." I'm like, no, you don't. I mean, we were set up to be able to do that, but it is still a risk. I mean, we didn't have a massive team that was maintaining it, and that is something that you have to be thinking about. But I mean, there are big benefits. If you've got really sharp developers that know the business and can do things. But I think in today's day and age, because the technology is just changing and iterating, and the APIs from the OTAs are constantly changing, it's really hard to do that. And unless you have the goal of, you know, becoming multi-market and being able to sell this software at some point, there's got to be something else tied to it of not just running a rental business. Like if you want to do something to that effect, perhaps it makes sense, but just do your research into it because it's definitely it's a labor intensive route to take
Mhm.
and high risk, high reward, but
Oh yeah.
cautious.
Many many companies have gone down this path and failed miserably. I mean, it is so expensive to develop. And are you really going to compete with a company that has dozens and dozens of developers that are working around the clock, making the product better every single day? I mean, and like you said, Alex, you have to maintain it. Even if you build it, just,
Yeah.
you got to maintain it. You got to hire those people to do it. Like you said, the APIs are changing all the time. I mean, there was a large vacation rental management company, very successful management company in the Smoky Mountains that attempted to build their own. And I think after spending well over $1 million, they finally pulled the plug. And they said, you
Yeah.
know what? It's still not as good as what we can buy off the shelf, even though it's been custom designed for us. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so expensive unless you nailed it. Unless you want to be a technology company, like
Yeah.
there's so many
Yeah.
good solutions out there. Um, yeah, I mean, and look at Vacasa. I bet you. I mean, Vacasa has. I mean, I forgot what the number they spend per year just on developing and kind of maintaining their existing instance.
Yeah.
I wish they had that. I'm sure
Mm.
they wish they had that cash spent, but pushed into different directions right now.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Agree with that.
And if anyone can do it, it's the largest companies, right? Like,
Yeah.
in terms of Acasa, and even they, like to your point, Brooke, it's not just, oh yeah, everything has been great and there's no disadvantages to it. I think that's,
Yeah.
what your point makes, light of, Alex, is that there's a lot of downsides here too. Not saying never do it, but like be very thoughtful. The fact that you think you're going to come in and just hire a few random developers on Upwork and build something great, not really the
Yeah.
case. Not going to be a great
I
product.
think too, I mean, part
Yeah.
of why our software was so good. I mean, our developer had been within the business for many, many years and had been a developer for much longer than that. But, you know, you have to have somebody that really understands the industry if you're going to go down that route, not just a regular developer, obviously. But I think the more reasonable approach to building, your own tech would be to still use an off-the-shelf PMS. But then for the things that it doesn't do, I mean, there are definitely a lot of people that are great with some light development work to do different reporting things and different procedures for how you're looking at your advertising, stuff like that. I mean, there's things that can be built, but that they're not something that if it didn't work or that person left, the company would be in complete dire straits.
Yeah. The agency I was at previously, Alex, we had the idea of like property enhancements. So that was like the regular property detail page came in from whatever PMS, and then we added
Yeah.
extra fields. Like, but maybe by default they didn't support a Matterport 3D tour, so we built a
Yeah.
property enhancement where it was like, and it wasn't required. It was a nice to have feature on the property detail page, and I think that was like a pretty solid outcome because you could make the website a lot nicer. There was extra functions, but to your point, we weren't trying to reinvent the wheel of like photos and galleries and property description and then kind of like the basics, but we were adding these
Yeah.
little extra flourishes, which I think was made a lot of sense. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. One that's near and dear to my heart, outsourcing marketing. While building an in-house marketing team can be expensive, it's worth it if your focus is on growing your brand. Unlike the previous point, marketing team can be scaled and adjusted easier than proprietary tech. So what are the pros maybe of outsourcing marketing? What are the cons? How do you feel those things work together to build that awesome brand awareness?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I wrote that from my perspective, from that part of my life. But I could argue both ways. I don't think that it makes sense for a rental company that has 50 to 100 units to have an in-house marketing team. Like in most cases, to hire a VP of marketing or a CMO, that's just not an affordable route to go. The benefit, in my experience, has been having that in-house team. This was a big operation, but we were able to really divide our teams by golf, vacations, homeowner services, and real estate, and to be able to have that view of the entire ecosystem of the company and truly understand how all those parts work together. It's hard if you have an agency outside of it for them to really get it. I mean, they don't have enough hours in the day to be able to truly know everything on the business. So for us, that was a great advantage to having it in-house. I mean, when we wanted to do an email blast or something quickly, it was done. I mean, I think the fastness of it is definitely an advantage to be able to do things quickly and efficiently and effectively, and then look at it and see if it's working, if it's not, where things need to be tweaked versus having to email an agency and back and forth. But again, I mean, Conrad, I know you're an agency, and now I'm a freelance consultant, so I get the other side of that. That's not necessarily the best bet for some companies. So it's really dependent on the situation.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, Brooke, if you could layer in the idea too of like fractional homeowner people, BD reps on the homeowner side. Again, does it make sense to bring someone in house? Could you use that role part time? Because I know that's something that you've explored recently too.
Yeah, I mean, so if you want to hire like the best business development rep, like you're going to have to pay six figures, easily.
Mhm.
And I hate to say it, but in a lot of these resort markets, you don't have like really high end, really good. There's not a lot of people to choose from. If there are, they're probably taken already. So yeah,
Mhm.
hiring a fractional business development rep makes a ton of sense. Where you're getting that six figure, rep, but paying again a fraction of the price. It's yeah. We've had a lot of success with it across multiple markets for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The question I was going to ask you, Alex, as a follow up is this idea that when you build a team, it's like that's what you have to do, right? I think the one mistake that I've seen people fall into is that I'm going to hire one person whose job is marketing, and I'm going to expect
Yeah.
them to know how to do SEO, paid search, email marketing. They can do video creation, they can edit photos. That's just a
Right.
path that I've seen people go down many times. And then what they find out is that they had to hire a marketing person, but then they still needed an agency to sort of augment or help that person every day. So I don't know if you had a
Absolutely.
perspective on that. Like the jack of all
Yeah.
trades, Jill of all trades doesn't really exist. And if they are, they're very
No,
expensive.
it doesn't. And when I first started at Condo World, I started as director of marketing at that point, and later on became CMO. But kind of the same thing, that I don't think it was expected that I could do everything, but quickly we're like, gosh, we need design. We've got an SEO agency, but we're not sure if they're doing it well. We're not sure if the website's being done well. So it's like, okay, that person that is that kind of like the maestro is a very important person to have within the company. But it's almost better, I think, to hire somebody that's a higher level, more strategic marketer, that they can oversee the agencies that you're using. Because if you just get a marketing coordinator, that's not necessarily going to be, in my experience, the best person to really push those agencies to make sure that they're really giving you good work. And the strategy is just, that's overall the most important part. I mean, if you're the general manager or the owner of a company, you have some time to be dedicating to the overall direction, but you need somebody that, when not in your absence, and somebody that has different creative talents than you, that is really pushing these different initiatives through, making sure the vendors are doing the best work possible for you.
Yeah.
Alex, I'd love your opinion. This is Jason Sprinkle mentioned this in his mistakes. He said his second mistake he made was around branding, and he goes, "You look, you're selling an experience, so lean into incredible branding early. Your brand should always make you look a little bit better than you actually are." What do you
Love
think of
that.
that?
Yeah. 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 No, I love that. I mean, and that kind of ties back to the point number one of thinking too small, right? I mean, like build for the brand that you want to be. You've got to have those big ambitious goals, and that goes for the brand too.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I like that. Ultimately, I feel like people might read that and be like, "Oh, an in-house team is the way to go." But I think you framed it well, Alex, where like your in-house people are always going to be a key part of the process. And I think like some of the best client results we've gotten has been working with an in-house marketing team
Yeah.
together. We're rowing in the same direction together, but
Yeah.
we also have some
Yeah.
capabilities and skills that they don't have, and that's fine. Like
Yeah.
they know the brand better than we do. So when we work
Yeah.
together, we get the best outcome always.
Yep.
Always. Nice.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, going to something that actually we talked about recently, project management software
Mm.
and like tooling. I'm a big advocate of this. So number 7, not using project management software to manage your in-house marketing team. Marketing teams need to think and work almost like an agency. There's different parts of your business and they are your clients. So the examples you gave in the book were vacation, a golf division, real estate division, homeowner acquisition are 4 divisions that you've led. And then depending on how the business is set up, obviously there may be different models. Maybe you could talk about
Mhm.
like some of the software that you have approached with, again, off the shelf versus building your own, what you've chosen there and how you've used those tools to manage all the work that does go on day to day.
Yeah, from 2009 until 2017, did not use any sort of project management
Wow.
software. Everything was done over emails and going to somebody's office and post-it notes. It was kind of all over, and it did the trick. But I was turned on to a product called Reich, which is a project management software. And all of a sudden, it was like the lights went on. And this was at a time where we were expanding outside of North Myrtle Beach into Florida and the Smoky Mountains and some other parts of South Carolina. We were doing 7 to 10 blog posts a week, 4 to 5 emails a week. I mean, multiple social media. I mean, managing agencies, managing in-house, a ton of design. I mean, my inbox was just constantly overflowing with proofs and things I had to look over. And when we went to Reich, it was like, okay, like now every job and every different project is all in one place. It keeps all the communication about what has gone on with it in one place, so that somebody, if the owner of the company wanted to go in and see what's going on, he can easily look at that, versus you can't go through someone's email and just find out a status on things. So that gave a ton of transparency into our department, and I think a lot of credibility into the department of like, there's always the saying, like, you don't need marketing. When things are good, you don't need marketing. When things are bad, what the hell is marketing doing? This really gave that transparency of marketing is always on. I mean, 365 days a year, we are always doing campaigns. We're always working on things. And this really showed how important that department was to the business's success. So I think whether you have a small team, a big team, using project management software will make a massive difference in your productivity and the results that you achieve from the marketing.
Hmm. I'd argue owner acquisition software is the same too. So I just
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Same premise. Yep.
But it's the
Well, and
same problem,
I
right,
will
Brooke?
say too.
Yeah. Go
Oh,
ahead, Alex. I'm sorry.
I will say too, Brooke, a lot of companies prior to working with you, they manage their homeowner acquisition the same way that I just described in the early years of like everything was over email, and you
Yep.
don't know if you responded back to that homeowner owner or followed up, or if it was with one team member, not another. Like it's the same premise. I mean, having a CRM in that case, or in my case, the project management software, it makes your life so much better, so much easier.
I honestly think it's probably only 5 to 15% of the VRMs that we talk to actually are using some sort of CRM to track it. Most of them are
Yeah.
using, like, if they're doing well, like, I mean, some of them have HubSpot, very, very few. A couple
Yeah.
of them will use a spreadsheet or a Google Sheet, but the rest are
Hmm.
using their email, or they're using like a yellow pad, or they're using sticky notes. Like
Yep.
that's the majority.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, Alex, the cracks start to form in the foundation so early when it comes to managing a lot of projects or managing a lot of homeowner leads. Like that might work fine if you have like one person and like a few leads you're working any given month. Maybe that works. The second you start to take it a little more seriously and get a little bit bigger, you just that system falls apart so quickly. Email's not meant for project management. Like, it's just not set up for that.
Yeah,
Nor is
no,
it
definitely not.
supposed to made for owner acquisition. Vintory is.
Yeah.
So.
Well, what I don't understand, I mean, we have many of our partners. Obviously we track every closing across 700 partners, and I mean, many of our partners, 50% of the deals that they are closing, it was in a long-term nurturing sequence. So what does that mean?
Yeah.
That means if
Yeah.
you don't have a CRM, that means half of the deals that you're closing are coming from deals that you wouldn't have closed if you didn't have it in some sort of CRM that's actually doing that automation, that follow up. I mean, that's a lot of properties.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. And to your point, Brooke, no one's going to remember like, oh yeah, the lead I talked to 4 months ago, let me go ahead and send him a reminder today, Tuesday at 10 a.m. because that's been 6 months since we chatted. No
but
one's
it's all in your head. It can easily leave your head quickly too.
Oh yeah. I forgot what I had for lunch yesterday. Yeah, I'm not going to remember that.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that makes sense. Awesome. Well, Alex, you touched on this a minute ago, so let's go back this direction. Number 8, not getting involved with your DMO. You are stronger as the sum of all parts. Your competition is more of an ally than you think. This thread has come up a few times with the idea of collaborating or just being open to talking to competition, but not a lot of people have talked about the DMO. So maybe you could talk about the DMO, your experience with the one obviously in Myrtle Beach, and kind of how it's helped, you in your career then, and how it's helped since grow those businesses.
Yeah, sure. So I've been on the board of directors for both chambers in our area, North Myrtle Beach and Myrtle Beach. This is my first year not being on either since 2012. So I don't know what to do with all my free time now. It's interesting, but it's so highly beneficial. And I know that not all DMOs are as sophisticated or have that level of participation as we do in Myrtle Beach, but most of the larger tourism destinations have some sort of an entity that gathers and pools the money to be able to market for the destination. And the one thing that I learned very early on was when we would get together with the companies, and this is at both chambers. I mean, it used to be back in the day that it's like you didn't tell anybody what you were doing. I mean, like you didn't talk about your strategy, you didn't talk about your marketing, because you could keep things very secret because you couldn't see everything because it wasn't online. So, as things started evolving, I think you realize like, you can find out what other people are doing for their marketing. It's not a secret. But as we all started sitting together at these meetings and tables, it's like, we are all in this together, because if we don't look at each other necessarily as the direct competition, these guests that are coming to stay, they're not only looking at us as companies, they're looking at other destinations. Mm-hmm. So if we all want to elevate the experience that guests have and why they choose Myrtle Beach in the first place, let's work together to make sure that, one, the product that they get and they check into when they get here upholds what we want to be known for as an area, and two, that we're trying to all level up together to provide an experience that is elevated compared to these other areas, and it makes it a no-brainer of why you'd come here versus another place. So I think getting involved is super important. I think kind of also ties in the people that you surround yourself with. You'll end up just not sharing trade secrets, but just sharing things that are working well and things that aren't working well. In our market here in Myrtle Beach, there's actually very few companies that go to VRMA and the vacation rental conferences, but they do go to the chamber stuff. So that's where I see most of them. But when I talk to them, they don't know about a lot of the tech that's out there that we talk about on a daily basis. And it just shows like, you've got to be involved in these things, whatever that looks like. But I think from the DMO perspective, if you've got an entity where you're able to participate in advertising programs, do it. And I mean, that subsidizes your cost to be able to have to go and do that directly, or supplements at least to a large extent.
I'm glad you brought this up. I don't think enough people actually do this. A lot of people do not really, or they're not involved in their DMOs or their chamber, even their chamber of commerces, but I think there was a couple people, Conrad brought this up too. I think Tom Goodwin brought it up. He's a platinum sponsor. He says it was worth every penny. And I think Mike Harrington said it was one of his biggest mistakes as well. But I definitely see people are not as involved in their DMOs enough, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and the main thing is too, I mean, if you really get involved, and I obviously got very involved. I was marketing chair on both, and then ended up being the chair of the board in Myrtle Beach. But when you rise up into those leadership positions, you also get a say in how the money is spent. And Myrtle Beach, we our average spending is $50 to $60 million a year. I mean, that's the fourth largest in the country, next to New York, Vegas, and Orlando.
Wow.
So that's a lot of money to spend, and you want to make sure that it's being spent in ways that are truly beneficial. And really, those organizations, they need that feedback from the members that are, it's our guest tax money that is going towards this. So I think when you have a seat at the table, you're not on the menu, you can actually make decisions and things that are going to benefit both your company and the destination as a whole.
Hmm. No, I think that's super well said. And yeah, Alex, why wouldn't you want to be, giving feedback to someone that's trying to promote your destination? Like, you're 100% on the same team, right? Like, we're all on the same team here. Of course, there's competition within the companies, but if the way I think about it too, Alex, is if the pie is getting smaller, then we're all fighting over crumbs. If the pie is getting bigger, more people are coming. Well, then everyone can actually get more bookings year over year, and they're going to be happy, and no one's taking bookings away from everybody else either. So that's a good way to think about it. Yeah, the destinations. Yeah, and obviously the chamber does a great job here locally. I know it because of all the traffic, here. So not in the summer. All right, number 9, a good one, relevant for today. Obviously, number 9, not listening to podcasts, reading books, attending conferences. Your network is your net worth. So here's the comment that Brooke has.
I forgot it was in that one.
Yeah, he's ripped this one.
Put the cat out of the bag.
Yeah, no, it's all good, Alex. Well, maybe obviously people are listening. They're kind of dipping their toe in the water, but maybe make a case for this about just like ongoing education and learning more about our industry.
Yeah, I actually, the first podcast I started listening to, which Conrad, you know this one too, was the Fuel Hotel Marketing podcast. And this was going back probably 2016, I'd say, and just learned so much. And it was mostly about hotels, but all of it really, as far as digital marketing, could be applied to vacation rentals or any type of accommodation. And that really kind of got me hooked on podcasts, and just started listening to more podcasts within our industry. Listened to Sarah T for years, and several others, not necessarily in the industry, but that I just learned a lot from the leadership perspective and business strategy side. And, during those years of kind of where my career was starting to really, go in a great direction, I leaned into everything. Like I read a ton. I wanted to go to all the conferences. I wanted to be like a sponge to soak up as much knowledge as I could. And, I think just being open to seeing different perspectives and learning how other people have done things, finding ways to avoid the dummy tax, which is essentially what this book is all about, right? I mean, that's the whole thing of how can you help other people so that they don't make the mistakes that you made. And in a lot of cases, you can find content and answers to those types of questions within that, inspirational content.
Right. There's so much content out there, right? If you want to learn about one thing, you could, even the nichest of niches you can find, and you can just listen to content. You can read that content. I started thinking about it, like I'll walk or run every morning for about 30, 45 minutes. So I'll listen to 1 or 2 podcasts. And, I started to think about this, like I've been doing that for 5 years, every single day.
Yeah.
That's close to 2,000, podcasts I've listened to. There's so much content and how much I've learned from that. And it's so beneficial. So if you need to learn about a topic, there's enough information out there.
And as a podcaster, I guess maybe, but I don't know. My way of listening is just like you. Either if I'm going out on a walk, if I'm driving, when I'm getting ready in the morning, I just put my phone on speaker and I'm getting ready in the bathroom. And it's funny when I hear people say like, "Oh, I don't have time to listen to podcasts." And it's like, it's not like I'm sitting here and just listening to my phone or doing it while I'm working. I feel like that's very distracting for me, at least. But it's like, do it in put it on in the situations where you're doing something else. And that's one of the best parts about podcasting is that it's passive listening, which, once you get in the hang of it, it's easy.
Mowing the lawn, in the car, any of that wasted time, It's funny. I used to always be on the phone. I'd spend all my windshield time, calling people and stuff like that. Now I usually just end up listening to podcasts when I'm in the car.
Yeah.
I get annoyed when somebody calls me,
Yeah, I know. Something must be wrong.
I do. There's some longer ones I listen to, Alex. And if I'm on the treadmill, that's kind of I'm trying to do at least 30 minutes on the treadmill. But I listen at 2x speed. I can take it in, and people have said
you talk at 2x speed too.
Well, and someone said, so I listen back to my own podcast. By the way, I always proof them, and I listen to myself at 2x speed, and I don't think it's that bad. So,
oh my god, that's hilarious! I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna listen to your show, and I'm gonna put it up 2x and see if I can.
All right, please do.
Figure out what you're saying.
No, but I think that is actually a hack too. And I don't feel that way. I don't feel bad if people do this to the shows that I do too. If it's not grabbing you too, like move on. Like you don't have to listen to every single episode.
Right.
Like, if it's not grabbing you, move on, check out the next one. I unsubscribe from very few, but there might be a month or two where I don't listen to a given episode, and that's okay. Like,
Yeah.
no people are going to listen to every single episode. You don't have to be interested in every topic. Sometimes there's topics
Yeah.
on the Alex and Annie show that are just not my cup of tea. It's not a bad thing,
Right.
but I'm just not an operations
Yeah.
person. Me learning about that isn't really the strongest thing. I might skip those and dive in the marketing ones. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like
Yep.
just in time learning. Like, what do you need to be focused on at that moment? It's great to go out and get that information and absorb it.
Yeah.
And then you can always pick up that new idea that makes it worth it. And I agree. There's
Yeah.
all this unused time throughout the day that we can dedicate to this. For me, it's treadmill
Yeah.
time, but driving, it could be a million things. Awesome. All right, number 10, then rounding us out here. At number 10, don't assume everyone has it figured out. Your input is valuable, and you never know what information you share that could be a game changer for everybody else. Yeah, it's kind of like, I feel like the other side of this too, Alex, is like, you don't know what you don't know. So sometimes you think you have something figured out roughly, and then someone says something to you and you're like, oh God, I didn't even think about that. So anyways, what's been your approach here when it comes to this whole idea of like learning and,
Yeah. Well, I think actually apparently I was writing this in like a looping format when I was putting my thoughts together, because number 10 kind of feeds into number 9 that I've learned from having the podcast, is that a lot of times we'll talk about topics that I feel like, everybody knows this information, and we'll have people say to us like, that was groundbreaking. Like I had, to them, it's like it was this information that they had never heard. It was like, we said we discovered fire or something. But to some people, we're all at different points in our career, I guess, is kind of the moral of the story. And there's a lot of people that are newer into this space within the last 5 years, that things that we've all been doing for, 15, 20 years, it is all new to them. And that's kind of been the exciting thing of like seeing people's, the aha moment that they have of, okay, now I understand like why you don't do this for marketing and why you need to do this for software. And it's really cool. So I think, whether you're at a conference and you're going to be on stage or, anything like that, just don't assume that people know what you know. I think we all have kept stuff in our minds for years, but we are treasure troves of information that is accumulated. And you just got to start talking about your ideas, and somebody's going to connect to them.
Mm-hmm.
I had a conversation with a guy last night. He's a new partner, asked to reach out and chat, and I said, sure. I mean, he's grown to like 50 properties, but stumbling doing it. I mean, he was asking me some of the most basic questions, and I'm like this guy, like he's like, should I use a management agreement? And I'm like, oh my God, like, you know what I mean?
Oh God, yeah.
I mean, and literally, he doesn't have a website. When you go, he actually has a website, but it links directly to his Airbnb page. And I'm like, wow, but he's somehow in a short order, gotten 50 properties, high-end properties. So he's just figuring it out. And again, to your point, Alex, like, you just assume that people understand what the hell's going on. And he's affiliated with a real estate company, but the real estate company doesn't like kind of what he's doing. He's like, should I spin this off? I'm like, oh my, hey, good for him. He's got this, but there's a lot of people coming to the space that really don't know what they're doing, but it's also kind of the cool part of this too, this is what, he will figure. Look, I didn't know what the hell I was doing when I started this. I figured it out, a lot of people, didn't either. So it's, I don't know. It's a fun time in the industry when you see all these people that are just have this hyper growth and just figuring it out as they go.
We were all there at one point. I've told this story on our show before, but when I first started at Condo World, I thought that we owned all the condos that we managed. And so it was probably about like a month into it, they were talking about these homeowners. And I was like, I didn't understand why I couldn't do something, because the homeowners were they weren't going to like it. And I was like, I just don't understand what this is about. And Roy had said, like, we don't own these properties. And I mean, it was foreign to me. I didn't understand. Clearly I understand it now, but you never know. People are at all different parts of their journey and understanding. And honestly, it is a little bit of a confusing industry, I'd say, just because there is no true playbook of exactly what everybody should do, because it varies so much. I think that's probably why, these podcasts have become, and books have become just vital information, because sometimes you have to read or listen to 4 or 5 things to be like, yep, this, that, and this, and now that's my strategy. So it's not like making widgets or something.
Right. The deliverable is so different. That's a good point. I think Alex needs the information of that partner. It sounds like they need a lot of marketing help. Right? Maybe I could talk to you too.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we both help them. All good. I think Alex, Brooke has one more question for you, and then we will wrap. But thank you so much for recording this today. This has been excellent. But Brooke, one more shot at Alex, I think here.
Yeah. Alex, if you could go back in time and go back to your 25-year-old self and give her a little bit of advice, what would it be?
Don't sweat the small stuff. And I mean, I've been told that my whole life probably, but I understand it more now of, um, one, don't sweat the small stuff. And two, you're going to meet so many amazing people in the next, you know, 20, 30 years that you're in business. Like the opportunities and things that are going to come your way will astound you, but don't sweat the small stuff. Don't overread into situations. You focus on yourself, your mindset, and understanding, you have the power to create your own reality through through the thoughts, through the actions that you do, and the steps that you take to get where you want to be. I think back then I thought things were way too dependent on certain things or certain clients that we would have, or different business deals. I would get really wrapped up in things that I don't feel that way anymore. It just takes having that hindsight to be able to connect the dots, but don't sweat the small stuff, and know that you're actually probably more in control of your destiny than you think you are.
That's great. What a way to end it. Thank you.
That is a great way to end it. Thank you again, Alex, for recording with us. Really appreciate it. If you made it this far, this was a star-studded episode. We got one of our veteran podcasters. I'm sure, Alex, you have hundreds of reviews on your podcast, but this podcast is a little bit newer. It doesn't have as many reviews. So what people need to do, so we can try to reach the download numbers that you guys do over there, you ladies do over there, is people got to go to their podcast app of choice, Spotify, iTunes, whatever they got. Click 5 stars, leave a review, then more people can see what we got going on here. So thank you again for recording this, Alex. We appreciate it, and we'll catch everybody on the next episode. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.